Right, so today I want to talk more about this whole migrant issue going on in Europe, I guess, mainly along the Turkey-Greece border. And why I wanted to talk about it is things have gotten a little more crazy, and like I said, like I always mention that when it comes to this issue, this is a big issue that's going on right now because if migrants keep pouring over the border, that's less and less likely that we are, as people who aren't on the left, to have a government that isn't on the left. And that's the main reason that is to be against this kind of stuff. And in the long run, it's going to be the best too, because if we keep voting in, far left governments and even a lot of the more not right wing governments, they may call themselves right wing, that are keep running these massive amounts of debt and free stuff, things are going to collapse sooner rather than later. And the whole point I wanted to bring up here is that, I mean, a few points, but first of all, they're not refugees. The legal definition of a refugee, I believe you have to be actively being persecuted. Just because there's a war going on in your country doesn't make you a refugee, which is what most people argue. But contrary to popular belief, I don't think that's true. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm about 99% sure. But anyway, the other thing to bring up too here is that if these people were genuinely if they genuinely deserve to come into the into Europe, then why do they have to deliberately harm their babies and lie and manipulate their way in? Like, why do they have to do it? See, on one hand, the left they really contradict themselves when it comes to this kind of stuff because on one hand they'll argue that they're so valuable to society that they come in, they pay taxes, and they help society, but on the other hand, they'll look at examples like this, and their argument will be, well, who cares if they're going to contribute to the economy? We just need to bring them in because they're in distress, and there's a war going on in their country, and if they don't, they might die. So it's a rank contradiction. The other obvious one too is that you have all these immigrants, invading soldiers is a good way of putting it, that are in Turkey. And one of the leftist argument, like I said, is that they're valuable to society, in that they'll come in and be paying taxes and whatnot, which is completely untrue. But let's just assume they are, for sake of argument. Um, then why is Turkey setting them loose onto Europe? Like, if they're so valuable, why wouldn't Turkey want to keep them? So it completely contradicts their argument. It completely proves the argument that they're a complete drain on society. Yeah, obviously, I understand. There's always the for lack of a better word, idiot in the comments section. It's like, oh, you think all of them are like this? No, I'm just talking about simple averages, just simple averages. Pretty clear majority. I think the numbers in Sweden are overwhelming the amount of migrants that aren't working. And even if they are working, it's more than likely going to be a low wage job to where there's still a net negative on society, given the fact that in, Canada, Sweden, most of these countries, they're getting a lot of government services provided to them. So even if you're working a minimum wage job, you're not going to be paying more in taxes than you're taking out in services. That's borderline impossible, especially considering how unhealthy a lot of these people are, at least compared to the average citizen. Um, and the likelihood of using welfare. But that's kind of the thing I wanted to point out in these videos is that we have to get a handle on this. And the one thing I like to point out too is people on the left, or even just not on the right, like to call people that want to control immigration, whether it's zero immigration, whether it's we need to cut back, regardless of your view, they like to talk about you as crazy. You hold these fringe views, even though the majority of people support it. I seen a poll yesterday on one of the YouTubers I watched that 80% of people in Greece do not want to bring in these migrants. I actually think the number was 82, but again, don't quote me on the exact number. It was just over 80%, I believe. And those were, I believe, government stats too. And this is what we have to take as a lesson in Canada. And like I say, in Canada, I think we're too far gone. The States, probably not quite. We need to understand this that in Europe, these countries have been at it for longer than we have. And look at the public sentiment towards this kind of stuff. The public is overwhelmingly, I mean, in Canada they are too, but not as much as in Greece. They've been exposed to this kind of stuff more than we are, and their opinions completely changed on it. And the problem is that the biggest problem when it comes to political issues in general is people just aren't willing to change their mind. It's just not going to happen. Like you have let's just take the example of people who watch CNN, MSNBC, ABC in the States. You have, and take the other example, Twitter, Facebook, with the issue of conservative bias. Um, James O'Keefe, Project Veritas, literally has ABC, CNN talking about the fact that they're biased against Trump, like literally saying we are biased against Trump on video. Um, they have Twitter on video saying that they shadow ban conservatives. YouTube, I believe too. They literally have these people admitting, saying it themselves on video, and yet you try and talk to people, mainly people on the left, and they'll still deny it. They'll still deny it, even though it's on video. It's on video. Look at the thing with Joe Biden and the quid pro quo with Ukraine. He literally said on video that, if you don't fire the prosecutor who's going after my son, you're not getting the $1 billion in aid money. Literally says it on video. And yet you talk to these kind of people, these people on the left, and they'll deny it. That doesn't happen on the right. Like, give me one example of that happening. You still have a lot of people on the right, namely people in Canada you talk to that still believe in Trump-Russia collusion, even though it's been debunked over and over again. But anyway, that's kind of another tangent. I just wanted to bring up just to kind of prove my point. But basically, to sum it up, we need to take this as a lesson in Canada that we don't need all these migrants. Like we don't. That the evidence is clearly against it working out. Like clearly against it working out. The problem is that on the left, they're so desperate for votes that they need to completely look past the fact that these people are overwhelmingly a net negative on society. They take out way more in resources than they put in, and they commit a lot of crime, which I guess is factored into the other thing. But anyway, that's we need to take that as a lesson that hey, the people of Greece have been more exposed to it than we have, and they're overwhelmingly against it. Maybe we should change our mind. But like I say, most people not willing to change their mind, even if they come across irreversible, um, irrefutable facts that contradict their point of view. Most people not willing to change their mind. Like I say, it happens on both sides, but to be fair, people on the right tend to have their views more rooted in fact compared to people on the left. So that's kind of why I always like to point out that difference. And I'm not even a big conservative anyway, so there's no such thing as oh you're just biased. No, come on. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. I do have my PayPal in the description. I do have an email address for e-transfer if you want to do that. I really appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already and share the videos. That's basically all I ask. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there.